All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our 2023 Civil and Environmental Engineering Town Hall. My name is Amanda Toos. I am the Communications Specialist here at the department. Today we have joining us a team of panelists, including Department Chair Bill Lykos, Jim Tingham, Director of our Geological Engineering Program, Rob Herrick, Director of Development, Scott Simons, Associate Director of Development, and Xiaopeng Li, which is one of our newest faculty members to join the department. If you have a question at any time, feel free to drop your question in the chat. We will hold all questions till the end of the presentation, but we will address them all. So anything comes up, just give us a heads up in the chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Bill Lykos.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's start by welcoming you all and thanking you for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's something we've been looking forward to doing again. We did this first in, I believe it was spring of 2021, when we were deep in the throes of COVID and unable to host events on campus. We were largely unable to travel to go out and see alumni and wanted to engage in some way. And we had something like 100 alumni sign up for that first town hall. And I think it was great on both ends. It's something we want to continue to do. I think we have somewhere around 100 today as well. So thank you so much for joining us. It's beautiful in Madison today. If you're not in Southern Wisconsin, I'm not a meteorologist, but I think spring is finally here. We had a bit of a cold snap this weekend, but I'm going to go ahead and make the call that it's springtime. So we're pleased about that. Here's our agenda. Hopefully you all can see the screen. We wanted to cover three basic topical areas, tell you a little bit about what's new in the department. We'll focus on just a few of the awards that our faculty and students have received recently. We couldn't possibly present them all, but wanted to highlight a few things. Wanted to tell a story about enrollment trends over the last 10 years or so and some of the exciting growth that we're experiencing most recently in the fall. It's been a pretty wild ride over the last year, both at the college level and particularly in our department. So I'll show you some data there and talk about what we think is going to be happening in the future in terms of enrollment. As Amanda mentioned, we'll introduce two new faculty today, our two most recent hires, both in transportation engineering. Shaw Lee is joining us as a panelist, and so he'll tell you a little bit directly himself about his research and teaching. And then I'll also introduce Sky Chen, who's another new faculty member that just joined us in fall 2022. Talk about a few goals and initiatives. Scholarships is one thing that we're really making an effort to increase, both to attract and diversify our student body. We have put a great deal of effort, thanks to the support of many of you, in awarding scholarships. We're really increasing the number of scholarships that we give to freshmen, and shall show you some data there as well. Strategic directions, we have spent a great deal of effort over the last year in particular, asking ourselves as a faculty and community of students, what do we think that civil and environmental engineering as an industry is going to look like over the 5, 10, even 20-year horizon, and how can we align ourselves to be innovators in that future vision? How can we differentiate ourselves as a department? So I will briefly outline some of the strategic directions that we've identified, as well as some cross-cutting themes that we're using as guideposts to invest in new faculty, modify our curriculum, these sorts of things. Facilities, I know many of you have questions about the new engineering building. We will give you some update on where we are with that planning. I'll turn a lot of that discussion over to Rob Herrick, who is helping the college to lead fundraising efforts for that building. But I'll talk a little bit about the demand, why we need a new building, and how that's going to impact growth as a college and meet the student demand that we're experiencing. And then finally, just get a few things on your calendar, some ways for our alumni to engage with the department. Day of the Badger, I'll talk about, that's next Tuesday and Wednesday, actually, that's coming up. The golf outing, which is going strong after 1 year missing it with COVID, but I'll talk a little bit about that. And then Engineers Day, which is in November. And then question and answers. I think that's the fun part of this format. We will provide some time to ask any questions that you like. We've received several already through the registration process, but we'll open the floor there for questions for any of the panelists that you might have. So let's go ahead and start then, starting with some brief mention of some awards. This first photo here is one of our senior capstone design teams. The 2 students there and the 2 instructors on the edges, that's Jan Kucher and Mark Olenek. This program, our senior capstone design program, continues to excel. I meet with other chairs of departments of civil engineering, and they always ask me, what are you doing? What are you doing so well with your capstone program? And I tell them that the secret sauce is our professors of practice group. Jan and Mark are both professors of practice. We have a group of around 30, I would say, dedicated adjunct faculty who do many things, but a big part of what they do is serve as team mentors in our capstone course. They often will bring design problems that then become capstone design projects directly from their place of employment. So this program is real world engineering. It's hands-on. This particular award was for a project where a student team developed plans to do some development on Lake Monona. You can actually read about that project if you go to our website. There's a blog about it. But direct community impact, I mean, that's what this program is all about. We're running out of places to put the certificates in the conference room there. This is our 6th NCEES award in something like 5 years. And so it's something we're really, really proud of. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our professors of practice for making that such a successful program. A few faculty accomplishments. I just wanted to highlight 2 of our younger faculty. Andrea Hicks is an associate professor in our program. She is very much involved in our efforts towards sustainability. She is now a director of the, what is it? I've got it written down here. Director of Sustainability Education through the Nelson Institute. She continues to win national level awards for her work in sustainability and life cycle analysis of products and processes. She, for example, is in Ireland right now on sabbatical. She's working on, the question of what do we do with batteries after they've reached their useful life in electric vehicles. Apparently when these batteries reach 80% of their chargeable capacity, they're no longer optimized. They no longer work for that intended function in an electric vehicle, but there's still plenty of stored energy in there. What can we do with these batteries? How can we use them? So she's answering questions like that, doing a great deal of community-based projects. So I wanted to highlight a few of her accomplishments. Hannah Blum, assistant professor, she's in our structural engineering group. She works with steel primarily. She's taking advantage of the new structures lab that we'll talk a little bit about here later on. She is also very much involved in that's what these awards are really centered on, educational initiatives toward using virtual reality and augmented reality in the classroom. She has developed a series of modules, for example, where students will put on a VR headset and be able to walk through like a steel frame building and look at the connections, pull the connections apart and see where they fracture, things like this. And the feedback from students has really been tremendous here. And she's really leading this effort on the college level. She's made these modules available for faculty across the college to adapt for whatever it is that they're teaching. So congratulations to both Andrea and Hannah. I think they deserve recognition here with our alumni. A little bit about enrollment and degrees. And so I wanted to start here at the campus level. The total undergraduate enrollment at UW-Madison now is about 50,000 people. That's as of fall of 2022. So that's 35,000 undergraduates approximately, and 15,000 graduate students and special students, professional students. The trends that we're looking at here are in terms of enrollment, the 5 largest majors on campus. And I wanted to point out the couple things here. One is the yellow increasing trend there. That's computer science. Some of you might be aware that the campus launched the School for Computer Data and Information Science in 2019, which brought together the departments of computer science, statistics, and information science. We're seeing a tremendous amount of demand, obviously directly in computer science, but that filters off into applied computer science. You can see that here in mechanical engineering, which is the other one that I wanted to point out, the orange one. Mechanical engineering is now the 4th largest undergraduate major on campus. And in my mind, those two trends are related. This is about automation. This is about data science, data analytics, artificial intelligence. These are trends that we don't see going away anytime soon. These are trends that have application in the civil engineering space. When we talk about some of our strategic directions a little bit later on, you'll see that we're investing heavily in automation, most recently in automated transportation systems to capture a lot of this student and employer interest in these technologies. So it's pretty dynamic environment on campus in terms of student interest in computer science and automation. At the college level, these are the top 6 majors in terms of enrollment at the College of Engineering. There's something like 45, maybe 4,600 undergraduate students in engineering right now. That's mechanical engineering at the top. The red one is ours. And so you can see this is relatively flat, somewhere around 450 undergraduate students in our department. We were seeing a bit of a decline over the last 4 or 5 years, which is consistent with what our peers are seeing in departments of civil and environmental engineering. The story that I want to tell, though, and it doesn't look like much in this context probably here, but that upward tick at the end reflects the size of our incoming class, our freshman class in just last fall. We have historically admitted 80 or so, plus or minus maybe 5 to 10 freshmen every year in the fall. This past fall, our department admitted 160 students. And so we doubled the size of our incoming freshman class. There was growth across the college. The college undergraduate enrollment grew by about 30%, but the growth in our department was disproportionate. We grew by 100%. That has largely to do with the implementation of our degree program in environmental engineering. About half of those 160 students entered civil engineering, and then about 80 of those students entered environmental engineering. There's a tremendous demand across campus for environmental engineering, environmental science. We see that already. If this trend continues, if we grow as a college, which it's one of the motivations for the new building. The new building would allow the college to grow by about 1,000 undergraduates and 500 or so graduate students. If that growth continues, we see no reason that this upward trend that we're starting to see will continue to increase in our department. So if you extrapolate, to 3 or 4 years when our current freshman class is our seniors, so when that environmental engineering program reaches steady state, we could be looking at 600, 650 students, which would put us at a historical high. There are constraints I think we have the faculty capacity to do that now. The constraints are going to be with labs. You know, offering hands-on labs to smaller groups of students is a priority. And so that's where the constraints are going to be. Space is going to be a constraint as well. And so these are the sorts of challenges that we're wrestling with as we think 5 or so years in the future. How do we manage this enrollment growth? But it's a great problem to have. It's a problem that we welcome and are extremely excited about. I wanted to mention a few new degree programs. The summary on the left there are the suite of degrees that our department offers. So BS in civil engineering, MS and PhD in civil and environmental engineering, BS, MS, and PhD in geological engineering. Jim Tingham, who's our GLE program director, will tell you a little bit about some of the new directions in that program. We also offer a PhD in environmental chemistry and technology. And then some of the newer ones. We have, for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years now, been offering an online master's in environmental engineering. This is something that we think is poised to grow as well as those students in our BS program move through toward graduation. We anticipate that they'll become a pipeline into that online environmental engineering program. It's relatively small now, something like 20 or so students, but we have the capacity to grow that. So that's very exciting. That meets a demand from students. A lot of those students are working full time, and we designed that program to have coursework at in-person coursework or synchronous coursework in the evenings, for example. I mentioned that the BS in environmental engineering, the circle on the right there are the general topical areas that curriculum is designed to cover. That's something that's a program that is on track for ABET accreditation during the next cycle. And so when that is fully accredited, we'll have 3 ABET accredited BS programs: civil engineering, geological engineering, and environmental engineering. The professional MS program, which is also something that we started just a few years ago. This is an in-person program where students can take 3 semesters of in-person coursework and finish a master's degree in 1 year. This is something that we continue to try and grow. Students can take one of 6 topical tracks within that accelerated program. But again, we're meeting a demand for students that aren't necessarily interested in the research track, but would like to gain the coursework experience that comes with an additional year, an additional 30 credits of study. Something that's in the works currently, Certificate of Architecture. This is something that also driven by demand. The only UW system school that offers a BS in architecture right now is UW Milwaukee. UW-Madison, as you can see, there is only one of 2 in the Big Ten without an architecture program. And in meeting with prospective students, so many of them are interested in some combination of civil engineering and architecture. And we think we're missing out by not being able to offer some formal educational experience in architecture. And so this is a 15 credit, or will be a 15 credit certificate program credentialed on the BS in civil engineering, where students will take about half of those 15 credits online through Milwaukee and the other half in person here at UW-Madison. We anticipate about 50 or so students in this program when it reaches steady state. We're motivated to do it because we think that we're, as I said, missing high talent students to peer programs that have an architecture associated with the BS. And so we think this will be an additional draw to meet demand from our students. So that's something we're very excited about. It's in process, pending campus approval, I believe, at this point. Hopefully we'll be on track to have that certificate in architecture implemented by next fall. New directions in geological engineering. Jim is here. Jim, I'll turn this slide over to you.
Hey, Bill, thanks. And we'll give your voice a little bit of a break for a minute or so. Thanks for everybody for participating. Geological engineering is really focusing on what we call 5 practice areas. This is from input from our alumni about what practice areas our geological engineers typically go into. And based on this, we're really starting to focus our messaging, outreach, and communications on energy resources and sustainable resource development, really evolving career track areas. We've always been strong in geoenvironmental, natural geohazards, and resilient infrastructure. So let me just give you an example of energy resources. So maybe 30, 50 years ago, energy resources to all of us meant coal, natural gas, nuclear. We are, as a society and as a program, really transitioning into renewable energy, specific to geological engineering. That really means opportunities in geothermal, whether it's high temperature geothermal sites with our colleagues in geoscience or geothermal exchange. We develop new courses in wind energy. Solar has a footprint in some of our courses. And then final thing that I want to touch on is sustainable resource development. While many of our GLE alumni might associate this with mining, it still is associated with mining, but really it's that sustainable resources, what to do with the residuals and the water management and other consulting services provided to the extractive industries. You can't open up the newspaper, public radio, whatever the case may be, without hearing articles about cobalt and copper and precious, not only precious metals, but other metals that we need for development of our society. So those are some of the areas and pushes in geological engineering we are looking into developing and communicating out to potential students interested in this area. So Bill, with that, I'll turn it back to you and I'll be here at the end for questions.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, wanted to highlight a few of our most recent faculty hires. Sky Chen, who couldn't be here with us today, but he's, as you'll see in the next slide, provided a pretty interesting video that we'll share with you. Sky received his PhD from Purdue in civil engineering. He works in the area of automated transportation systems, artificial intelligence and data science. He joins our transportation engineering group. Shaw Lee, who you'll meet next, also is new faculty in our transportation engineering group. So this is an area that we really are strategically thrusting in, particularly in the area of automation. Those two bring critical mass to our already outstanding transportation engineering group. We think that the new research that they're bringing and the new coursework that they're able to offer, you can see Sky is going to be teaching a course in AI applications in transportation. That'll be relatively unique at the undergraduate level nationwide. We think that's the type of course that will draw students not just from civil engineering, but those interested in applied automation in general. So we're very excited about what Sky does. This is just an example of the type of research that he's doing. This is a little video here, and you'll watch that yellow car there and see what it does. Let's see here. So one of the things that Sky is working on is collaboration, if you will, among autonomous vehicles. So the yellow car makes a sudden lane change there, and these three other cars are sensing but also communicating with each other to optimize, in this case, safety and collision avoidance. I had a pretty fascinating talk with Sky about transportation automation, and he was telling me about the fact that you can automate a or you can design an algorithm to really target anything that you want to optimize. You can optimize safety, for example. You can optimize a reduction in traffic congestion. You can optimize, the speed with which you get to your destination. And it occurred to me when he was telling me the story, I have a little dial in my car that changes the parameters of the transmission, I guess, for different road conditions. There's a little snow button and a little ice button and a little mud button. And I had the thought that we will soon see automated vehicles with a little dial in there where you can optimize safety or traffic congestion or efficiency. And it occurs to me that would be a pretty interesting decision to make when you got in your car every morning, what you wanted to optimize. So Sky is bringing a great deal of excitement to our program. We're happy to have him with us. Shaw is here, I believe. Did Shaw sign in, Amanda?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Shaw, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. Hi, everyone. I'm a new faculty member, and I joined together the same time with Sky, where we work on similar and related areas. I'm very excited to join this vibrant and promising department. This is my education background. So you may notice that I obtained my PhD degree from University of Illinois in the Midwest, and I worked at the University of South Florida before, which is way south, and then I finally come back to the sweet Midwest home. Here working as a professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at UW-Madison. So I served as a faculty member, center director, and led multiple projects. So my research is mostly emerging transportation technologies, including both modeling and field experiments, and also analyzing a larger scale transportation systems which incorporate such emerging transportation technologies. And one particular technology that we've looked into is called connected automated vehicles, so which falls in the general strategic area about automation. And one unique thing is that, with collaboration with Dr. Sky Chen, we actually have, we're constructing a lab that houses multiple full-scale connected automated vehicles, including sedan vehicles and electric vans. We want to have a hybrid fleet that could perform research and education tasks at scale. Besides the vehicles, we've also built a set of cooperative perception equipment instrumented on both the vehicle ends and also the roadside. We have roadside portable stations that can be connected to traffic signals, can serve as standalone sensors. So we have a vision of building a smart city that's incorporating perception and smart technologies such as a digital twin, artificial intelligence, as well as control and optimization to serve transportation system and also our overall city infrastructures. So my teaching is also built upon the research. This semester, I actually started a new course called Connected and Automated Transportation Systems with mostly graduate students, not only from civil, but also I saw students from computer science and mechanical engineering. So it's quite well received by interdisciplinary bodies of students. And I'll also be teaching a traffic control class in this fall. Basically, things are moving very well here, and we've already had one of our vehicles in our lab housed at the auto workshop in the engineering center building. And if you come visit us, you may be able to have a tour, or we can give you a ride sometime. Yeah, that's pretty much about my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Shaw. All right, a few goals and initiatives. I mentioned scholarships. Just wanted to provide some data from our most recent fall 22 round of scholarships. We awarded 98 different scholarships. Many of these to freshmen. I would say the majority to freshmen, but these are for the entire undergraduate student body. $242,000 collective total for those scholarships, and 72 different recipients. If you put that in the context of 450 or so students, we are able to support our best and brightest and those in need very effectively. And it's something we want to continue to ask for your help to do. So thank you for your support of our scholarship program. I mentioned a little bit about the strategic visioning that we have put some effort into, in particular over the past year. Again, the goal here was really to create really a framework that we can lean on to make decisions about hiring, decisions about our curriculum, how we differentiate our department from our peers, and ultimately how we produce graduates who are best positioned to be future leaders in civil and environmental engineering. So the thematic areas that we have identified and have started to invest in or continue to invest in, intelligent transportation and infrastructure systems. You met Sky and Shaw, our two most recent hires in intelligent systems. Next generation materials, structural systems, and construction processes. We have made recent hires, for example, in composites. We're doing a great deal of work with composites. What I would call carbon-friendly concrete, concrete that reduces the carbon load. So sort of in addition to what I would call traditional civil and environmental engineering materials, concrete, steel, we recognize the need to adapt and develop next generation materials and processes as well. Robotics in construction, remote monitoring and construction processes. One of our faculty within the past 5 years or so works on those processes in construction engineering management, for example. Public health and environmental safety, really to support the environmental engineering program, and then water, earth, and energy resources. Much of this in the context of climate change. We are actively recruiting right now in the area of water resources. For example, somebody who works on the impact of extreme environments, extreme climatic events like drought and fire. What are the impacts of these extremes on the hydrologic cycle, the carbon cycle, et cetera? Earth and energy resources. Jim talked a little bit about critical minerals. We have several faculty in our GLE program working on wind and geothermal. So we want to continue to invest in those areas as well. And then 3 cross-cutting principles that really cut across all of these thematic areas. We think that civil and environmental engineering in particular is well poised to make an impact towards social and environmental justice. So that is a cross-cutting principle that we advocate. Quality of life, and then we've already talked about the considerable efforts, not just in our department, but really across campus in the area of sustainability. A little bit about facilities. Those of you who were with us on this town hall 2 years ago learned about the John and Sandy Lee Structures Lab, which opened in fall of 2019. If you haven't been back to campus to see this facility, I would highly recommend it. Walking into this space is truly awe-inspiring. The location of it, you can see my little pointer here. This is the, let's see, the southwest corner of Engineering Hall. This is the shell back here. So if you walk back there now, you'd see this sort of cube-like appendage on the corner of the building. And what's inside that cube is an L-shaped structural reaction wall where our structural engineering faculty can build full-scale building components and then use that wall as well as the structural floor as a reaction to push off and apply load to various structures and measure response. The image that you see here is a concrete coupling beam that's reinforced with steel fibers and being tested for I believe that's a dynamic loading problem. So this is something that we continue to be very excited about and are grateful to have this facility within our department now. So again, if you haven't seen it, you're welcome to come by and check it out. It is well worth doing. We have made recent investments in our fluid mechanics instructional lab as well. Full renovation of the fluid mechanics teaching lab was possible through a donation in water resources engineering. We have started to invest in the equipment now that is in that room. One of those pieces of that investment is the teaching flume. And so this is a flume that's in that space where we are developing experiments where students can use lasers to do particle image velocity, to track particles and things like this, really get that hands-on direct experience with flume experiments, as well as some of the other experiments in that room. So the feedback from students on this has also been tremendously positive, and we're grateful for the ability to make those upgrades to that teaching facility as well. And then finally, the new building. And I have to say, I have seen drawings that are more recent than this. Rob can talk about that a little bit, but this does give you a general sense of at least the location of the planned building. So this is Engineering Hall here. This is just north of Engineering Hall. So the fountain is somewhere right around here. That gives you a sense of the location of the building, the size of the building, 350 square feet, I believe. It would allow our enrollment across the college to increase by something like 1,000 students and undergraduate students and 500 graduate students. Rob, I think I'll turn it over to you if you don't mind to kind of let us know where we are in the process and what the future looks like here.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. As you mentioned, the main goal of the new building is so that we can grow our undergraduate and graduate population by a total of about 1,500. There is demand off the charts, both in applicants and from industry wanting to hire our graduates. So we get more than 8,000 applications every year, and we typically admit about 1,000 of those. So there are plenty of good students who would love to come here and get an education in engineering. And we'd like to be able to admit more of those. On the other end, last year we had more than 18,000 jobs posted, again, for 1,000 graduating engineering students. So we need more engineers. Badger engineers, in my opinion, are the best engineers. So we need to produce more of those. Overall cost of the project is $355 million. We're asking the state to provide $205 million, and we're going to raise $150 million privately. Thus far, we've raised about $35 million. Most of those are in contingent commitments. So in essence, if the legislature decides they're not going to fund the building, those $35 million in commitments will go away. We are feeling pretty positive about our position with the legislature. The governor did include us in his budget. But if any of you follow Wisconsin politics, you know that typically the legislature will rip up the governor's budget and decide what they would like to have instead. But again, we're feeling positive about the conversations that we've had. For anyone who is in Wisconsin, I would ask that you consider reaching out to your legislator or legislators and advocating on behalf of the project. There's actually a link that I can drop in the chat where you just fill in your information, and it will send an automated message directly to your legislator. So again, if you can find the time to do that, that would be much appreciated. In terms of the department and its footprint in the building, it is highly likely that environmental engineering will have a space there. So we'll have a new lab in the new building. And if any of you have seen the current environmental engineering lab up on the 3rd floor, we desperately need a new space with new equipment. So very hopeful that this will go through in the legislature this time, and that we'll have a new building, which will be done either in the fall of 2027 or the early 2028.
Thanks, Rob. And we do have time for questions afterwards, Rob. I'm sure some of them will be about the building. So if you don't mind sticking around, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. And then finally, just wanted to get a few things on your calendar, ways that our alumni can connect. Day of the Badger is coming up next Tuesday and Wednesday. This is a fundraising and community building event. If you got the email to be on to sign up for this webinar, I'm sure you're going to get an email or several about Day of the Badger as well. So it's fantastic. At a minimum, wear red that day. Wear it to work, wear it around your house, and show some Badger pride. That's really what this is all about. Our golf outing, as I mentioned, after 1 year hiatus from COVID, we ramped the golf outing back up last fall. As successful as ever. We had something like 200 or so individual golfers participate in that. That's a fantastic event. That I understand that's going to be a Pleasant View again next fall on September 29th. If you would like to join, or if you'd like to get involved in the planning process, reach out to me or Amanda, and we'll get you hooked up there. And then finally, November 10th is Engineers Day. That is a day that we as a department will have an alumni banquet and honor 2 distinguished alumni from our program that evening at a college-wide alumni event. At a minimum, consider coming to the banquet lunch during that afternoon on the 10th. I believe that's a Friday afternoon. That's a lot of fun. Great way to meet some of our faculty, meet fellow alumni. So I'd encourage you to put that on your calendar and try and attend that as well. If you have questions about any of these events, we've got some contact information here that we'd be happy to put you in the right direction for any of those events. So with that, I want to save some time for questions. I know that we had several come in during registration, but we'll open the floor. Amanda, I'll turn it back over to you and let you kind of lead the question and answer session.
Thanks, Bill. So yeah, to start off with our first question here that was posed in the chat, and this was also a question that came up during registration. How are we addressing climate change in our courses?
Well, I'll give you a very recent example. Going back to the POP group, they have developed a new course on sustainability that touches on climate change. That course has been made available. It's a very interesting sort of case histories series of it's a series of case histories with application to civil and environmental engineering. That's a course that we designed with the vision of it being a broad reaching. So again, students beyond just our department, but those interested in sustainability and climate change, we think will draw in that direction. We have a couple faculty working directly in climatic effects, flooding. I mentioned we were recruiting somebody who works on extreme events as well now, more on the drought side, forest fire side. So it is when we look at those strategic directions, the environmental and public safety, the water, earth, and energy resources, creating a sustainable future, climate change is underlying each one of those directions. So maybe that answers the question.
Thanks, Bill. Question for Jim. Jim, regarding GLE, How can alumni or companies that employ GLE grads help support the program?
Thanks, Amanda. And for the question, supporting the program means supporting our students. One of the biggest things with the geological engineering program and others is our ability to implement really cool field trips and similar. So a student activities fund where we're able to take students for the geophysical field camp, visit sites, participate in conferences and similar. So one of the easiest ways is to support our student fund and our student outreach activities, because that has meaning and impact. Because for the geological engineering alum on this call, I think those experiences is what you appreciate it. And that's what we would like to continue to do.
Thanks, Jim. Another program related question. This one came into the chat from Kieran. How is the geospatial program, or has the geospatial program been completely retired?
I would say yes. We haven't taught GIS in several years. We haven't brought in faculty with that expertise as of now. You know, I'd be reticent to say it's retired, but it hasn't been active for some time.
Thank you, Bill. Next question. This one came in during registration. What do we do to encourage faculty and students to be involved in ASCE and in obtaining PE registration?
Well, we have a very active ASCE student group. In fact, they were just in my office here last week with a really impressive proposal that had a budget that they wanted to travel to a regional canoe competition, and absolutely, yes, would support them to go do that. So we have active concrete canoe team, active steel bridge team. I think those are the ways that students initially get involved, even as freshmen, with our ASCE chapter. One of the things that we're trying to do is increase the visibility of that chapter. I'm working with Concrete for Canoe, for example, right now to try and put the canoe right outside our office, or at least part of it. We've figured out we might need to cut it in half, but we'll get that displayed to really bring visibility to that program. In terms of registration, PE registration, we highly encourage our students to take the FE exam, and about 90% of them or more do take the FE exam, which is the first step toward professional registration. We've had discussions recently about making the FE exam a program requirement for graduation. It turns out that there are some structural constraints. We can't make taking that test a requirement for the program, but we can make it a requirement for a particular course. So the current discussion is, do we make taking the FE exam a requirement for the capstone design course? We have the support of our alumni board on that notion, and are working through that. You know, one of the things that we would want to do is provide financial support. There's a test fee associated with that for the students who need it. So those are the things that we're working through. But yes, those are communicating to the students that you're on track for professional licensure, and we're gonna help you get there.
Thanks, Bill. If anyone again has a question, you can feel free to raise your hand or pose it in the chat at any time. Otherwise, I'll just continue rolling through the questions we received during registration. So next registration question, how are we responding to recent infrastructure related legislation?
Well, I mean, I would say that, you know, the fact that the term infrastructure has been on kind of the national spotlight for the past couple of years has been very beneficial for us as a department, you know, and the injection of federal funds into infrastructure. I think some of the data that supports that is, you know, we were talking about, you know, the size of our incoming class was 160 students. we expected the introduction of the environmental degree to draw many more students away from civil than it did. Our incoming civil students numbers, 80 the previous year as well. So we didn't see that draw down in civil that we were expecting by analyzing what was happening at peer institutions. And we think that reflects an increased interest in the infrastructure aspects of civil engineering. So, the fact that there are there's federal funding injected into infrastructure, and that it's become part of the national discussion, I think, are very, very positive for our department outlook.
Thanks, Bill. Kieran had a follow-up question. What can we as Badger alumni geospatial engineers do to help bring that program back?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know that I have an answer for that right away, just because I haven't thought about it. I might need to come back to that one. And Amanda, if you give me some contact information, I'll respond.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, I'll put you in touch with Bill via email. We have your contact information. Next question, an enrollment question. What is our population of Korean students?
That is a question, I will admit, that there's no way I would have known the answer to that, but that's one that we got beforehand. And so I had the opportunity to look it up. So I can provide some numbers, at least on the college level. So the question was, how many Korean students are there? And at the college level, there are about, it's a College of Engineering, 1,200 international students. 33% approximately are from China, 33% from India. And then the next two largest groups of international students are Korean students and Saudi Arabian students. They both make up about 5% of that total international student population. So across the college, there are about 60. Within our department, I don't have that information.
Thank you.
But I do know that there is a Korean science and engineering student chapter here on campus that I would imagine our Korean students are very much involved in.
All right. How will AI affect teaching at UW-Madison? Very timely question.
Yeah, so when I think of AI in the context of a question like that, the first thing that comes to my mind is Chat GPT, I think, and there's been some campus level discussion about this. I mean, it hasn't quite reached the water cooler yet, if you will, but we're all thinking about it. Campus has provided some guidance on at least the academic integrity implications of something like that. But I think that, and this is my own personal view, I think that as with any new technology, we kind of need to embrace it as a new technology, both the good and the bad, and play with it as a tool. I mean, I think there's there could be lots of ways to do really effective instruction with something like that. I think it remains to be seen. So I think the question was, how will it affect instruction? I think it could be very positive. I think that some faculty will embrace it and use it as an effective tool, and others will assume that it's a threat to academic integrity and not use it and put processes in place to keep it from being used. But I think it'll be an interesting experiment that we should welcome with at least an open mind. Can't hear you, Amanda. Still can't hear you.
There we go. All right. Question here from Stephanie. What is the current typical graduation timeline for CE grads based on credit load? Is it 4 years? And how do we keep students on track for graduation?
Yeah, so the college average, and the department average is going to be around there, is something like 4.5 years or so time to degree on average, and that's decreased. That's on a downward trend over the last several years. Our curriculum, both in civil, geological, and environmental, is 128 plus or minus 1 or 2 credits right now. So it's possible to do it in 4 years, and many of our students do. You know, the way to keep them on track, advising. We have an incredibly strong central advising system in place that not just helps students understand, you know, where they want to be, what areas they want to go in, but making sure that they have the early coursework to get them there. So touching in with the students, making sure that they're doing on track and are happy with their chosen major are the major things that we can be doing.
All right, another program question. With the retirement of Professor Bahia around the corner, is the asphalt pavement program still available, or will it be canceled?
Well, that corner, we've turned that corner. Professor Bahia retired last August after something like 26 years in the department. Those of you who know Hussein know that he put us on the map as a leader in particular modified asphalt technology. That's something that we've worked with Hussein to continue. We've brought in a research scientist to keep the MARC lab going, and to teach asphalt related courses. It's something I'd like to see continue for as long as we can. You know, I mean, I think again, our graduates need to be working. You know, we're talking about all these high-tech areas, but our graduates they're going to go out there and build roads. A lot of them, they're going to go out there and design buildings, and they're going to go out there and work immediately. And we need to provide them those experiences. So when I look at a question like that, and look at the investment that we've put into that area in the past and the legacy that's there, I think it's something that's worth continued investment. And so we're doing that now with a research scientist who's working with Hussein. He says he's retired, but we all know that he's not. So we're going to try and keep that going as best we can.
Thanks, Bill. All right, a few more questions here from our registration sheet. All right, what are the focus areas what are our focus areas when we're identifying new faculty?
Well, I mean, that question is really what motivated part of the strategic visioning that I described. You know, what do we want to hire faculty who are going to bring us to the future vision. And you know, so those focus areas are things like automation, automated processes, advanced materials, automated construction processes, and then sustainability, climate change, all of the things that fall within the environmental side of things as well. So, you know, when we're making a new faculty hire, we are asking those questions. Well, are they in an area where there's growth? Are they in an area where they can bring new experiences to the classroom? And it's those directions that we have defined to help guide us toward answers to those questions. Oh, you're muted again, Amanda.
There we go. All right, thank you. How about the latest in PFAS research, both in drinking water and wastewater here at UW-Madison? What does that look like?
Jim, I'll let you chime in on this, but let me first. Jim is very much involved in PFAS related research, but we also have another faculty here, Christy Remicall. Christy is, she is, what is it? I want to get it right. She's the UW system representative. So she represents the entire UW system on Governor Evers' PFAS Action Council. So she has really become one of the faces of UW for PFAS related research and community outreach, these sorts of things. She conducts research in identification and transport of PFAS in natural environments, river systems, things like that, but has really gotten engaged in the outreach parts of it too. So the answer to the question is at least 2 faculty are very active. Jim, maybe you could touch in a little bit on some of the work that you've been doing with PFAS.
Sure. colleague, Chris Zahosky in geoscience, and I in Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey are working on basically developing models to track the transport of PFAS from the unsaturated zone down into the groundwater zone. That is a National Science Foundation grant. And Rhinelander, Wisconsin has been one of our field sites where we have very, I'll just politically call it, strong hypotheses of source areas that we are tracking through the system as a field site. So yes, it's one of those examples where collaboration across programs and departments is where we're able to secure these larger research grants at the federal level.
Thanks, Jim. All right, so I think we got about 2 more questions here. If anyone else has, actually here, how can alumni help teach a course or give advice to students? Basically, how can alumni get involved?
That is a good question. I think the immediate response would be get involved in our professors of practice. That is exactly what that group does. They, as I mentioned, mentor capstone teams, but they also help the department understand kind of from the industry perspective what we should be teaching our students. An example is we recently worked with the professors of practice to answer 2 questions. One is, what are the software tools that are being used in industry? What are the important tools, and how? And then the second part, how are we doing in preparing our students to be able to use those tools? And we're digesting that data, but the underlying message is that tools like Revit and integrated design, these things aren't just drawing tools anymore. We're talking about integrated design and analysis have become critically important, and we're doing okay at giving our students experience to these tools. And so one of the outcomes of that data is, okay, well, how do we get the POPs to help us? We've talked about having them come, for example, and enter a class and give a module on a particular software tool. We have to find a balance between teaching the fundamentals and teaching the tools, but it's become evident that we've got to do both, particularly these days. So the question was, how can you help? Get involved with the professors of practice. Don't have to be in Madison. I think we can accommodate virtual meetings now very easily. And so if you have interest in interacting with our students directly, helping the department understand how we can do our job educating the students better, the professors of practice is the place to get involved.
Yeah, the other avenue, Bill, I'll just add is Wisconsin also does a large series of continuing engineering education short courses. Many of our alumni are instructors in certain of those programs. So for example, next week, we are teaching like the 27th annual offering of solid waste landfill design. Got a handful of alumni that are expert instructors in that course. So if you've seen those programs and consider yourself a great speaker and technical expert in one of those areas, by all means, contact me and we'll see if there's a spot in that continuing engineering education platform.
Thank you both. All right, so just to kind of wrap up here, we did have a question in the chat from Tom about the 100-year concrete study and the status of that, which I did drop a link to the most recent news article in there. But basically, Steve Kramer is wrapping that up, correct, Bill? You want to share a few words on that?
Yeah, so that if any of you aren't familiar with that, that's a pretty exciting study. So I think it was actually the experiment is over 100 years old, where somebody in the department constructed or poured several concrete cylinders and These have been stored now in various environments, some of them underwater, some of them in a humid environment, for 100 years now. And tests have been done kind of through the years. This series of concrete cylinders has been curated by something like 5 or 6 different faculty over the last 100 years. The most recent, as Amanda mentioned, is Steve Kramer, who is going to help us this summer test the final batch of concrete cylinders. And so they'll measure compressive strength and stress strain relations and so forth. That's going to be an interesting result. You know, I mean, I think that's the type of project that is exciting to think about. And Amanda, I'm sure you'll be busy kind of on the external relations side, letting everybody know how that experiment goes. But yeah, we're definitely running with that. Steve's excited about doing it. He was involved with I think it was the 75-year test. And so this will be the final 100-year test.
Thank you. All right, 2 final questions here. What is the outlook on attracting more students to the program, specifically transportation, which I think we've spoke to a little bit, and then any plans to add Civil 3D to curriculum?
Well, the Civil 3D question is that's the type of question that motivated the survey I just talked about. So that's you know, I mean, that is something that we're trying to figure out. How do we integrate it in a way that's going to be enough exposure for it to be meaningful? So we're working with the professors of practice on that. The question about transportation engineering, I mean, this is when you get critical mass in a certain area, which I think we have now in transportation. I have no doubt we're going to see a draw of students to that area.
Absolutely. All right. What about hybrid or remote work environment? Are we doing anything to prepare students for those work environments?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're getting prepared whether we're doing anything or not. You know, I mean, we learned quite a bit during the last couple of years, and one of the things that we prioritize is in-person learning. I mean, the majority of our classes, if not all, are in person. We think that's the best way to teach students. But we take advantage of office hours that might be remote, things like this. And so students are getting that exposure to the online work environment. Again, whether we're explicitly doing it or not. I think it's one of those things that has been somewhat of a benefit. You know, I have just in my own work have calls with people, you know, across oceans that I wouldn't have had these meetings with previously. And so it's happening both with our students and of course with all of us.
Thanks, Bill. And then our final question today is really looking forward to the future. What kind of challenges do you see the department having over the next 10 years? And how can alumni help us address those challenges?
Well, I mean, I pointed out the good problem to have, and that is of growth. You know, we're going to do everything we can to continue to grow, but that's going to be a challenge. You know, I talked about bottlenecks that we'll have to deal with in particular in lab courses, because we still want students to get hands-on exposure to these experiments. We want small groups. We don't want to teach lab groups of more than 4 or 5 students in a particular group. So that's going to be a challenge really finding the times. You know, if we're gonna have individual lab sessions, we're going to have to offer a lot more sessions, maybe more in the evenings, maybe forbid before 8 o'clock in the morning. But these are the types of things that we're talking about to address the growing enrollment. I mean, that in my mind is the biggest short-term challenge, but I think of it more as an opportunity. You know, we need to produce more engineers in this state. We need to produce more civil and environmental engineers, and so we'll take the challenge to be able to try and do that.
Thanks, Bill. And just a final call. Is there anybody else that has questions for us today? I think the crowd is silent. This has been really good.
Yeah, let me take the opportunity to thank everybody. Amanda, thank you in particular for organizing this and reaching out to all of our alumni who were able to join us. And thanks so much to all of you for joining us. Thanks, Jim, Shaw, and Scott for being here, Rob. Really appreciate it. If you have follow-up questions, I know there's at least a couple follow-up questions that I will address, but if you have others, you see our information there. If you want to get involved in the golf outing, if you want to get involved in the Professors of Practice, reach out. That's what this is all about today, is connecting and providing those of you who want to get engaged a mechanism to do so. So thanks for tuning in.
And I would add to that, if you are not already connected with us on social media, feel free to please connect with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. We're always sharing updates on news and events on those channels, so that's a really good way to also stay in touch. All right, well, thank you all for coming today, and we will be in touch. Please keep a lookout for additional future town hall events and things of that nature.
Thanks, everybody.